Absolutely delighted now to be joined by Jeremy Mathis from NOAA. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit, if you will, about the Arctic Research Program and the report card.
Sure. Well, I run the Arctic Research Program at NOAA, which is focused on a number of different areas in the Arctic. But every year we have the opportunity to produce something called the Arctic Report Card. And this year is our 12th year that we've released the report. And it's really an update to show how the Arctic is doing in any given year, but also compare the conditions that we see this year to historical conditions that have happened not only over the past decade or so, but going back even further than that. And one of the big things that came out of the report card this year, and I think why it's so important, is we've used some new information to show that the pace of change that's happening in the Arctic today is really unprecedented in the last 1,500 years. The Arctic is changing faster today than it has really at any point during human history. And that's causing challenges and providing some opportunities. And so that's why we produced the report card, so that every American and our science colleagues and our partners and other U.S. agencies and around the world can know what's happening in the Arctic.
That's quite a statement. It's changing faster than in the last 1,500 years. That's quite amazing, really. Tell me some of the ways in which it's changing.
Sure. Well, several of the big ways is the sea ice is disappearing, both in the summertime, but now also in the winter. In March of 2017, we had the lowest ever winter sea ice minimum, so the ice didn't grow nearly as much this winter as it has in previous winters. We continue to see low ice in the summer months. Temperatures are continuing to show that they are increasing significantly over time. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. There's a major loss of snow cover, glaciers are melting, and probably most alarming for me is the fact that the Greenland ice sheet is starting to show signs of increased melting, and that is clearly going to have major implications for sea level rise around the world.
What are some of the things that we can do about this?
Well, first thing we have to do is recognize that the Arctic isn't just some faraway place that's locked up at the poles full of polar bears. We need every American and really every citizen of the world to know that what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. The big changes are coming, and those changes are going to impact every single person on the planet, and particularly the people living in the northern hemisphere, whether it's through things like sea level rise or dealing with more extreme weather events that are being caused by this warming that's happening in the Arctic, all the way down to dealing with some of the first climate refugees that we're going to see because of the displacements that are going to start happening in the Arctic.
When people watch the television and they hear reports like this, and you see reports on the news like this, and so well, what can people do about it? So what can ordinary people, citizens if you like, do about this?
Well, again, the first thing we have to do is raise awareness. The second thing, the major driver of change in the Arctic is emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We clearly recognize that there are natural cycles that happen in the Arctic. The Arctic does get warm and cool over really interglacial time periods, but humans have kicked that up a notch by our emissions of carbon dioxide into the environment. And so anything we can do to begin to bring down our CO2 emissions will help mitigate the worst impacts that are still yet to come in the Arctic. But in the short term, we're going to have to deal with the challenges that are already there because of what we've already done in the environment. And so what we can do, we can encourage things like resilient communities, we can invest in new infrastructure, we can invest in the observing and the monitoring that's needed to provide predictions and better understanding for not just the folks that live up in the Arctic, but the people that are going to want to use the Arctic, whether they be for tourism or resource development or new transit routes. Everybody that's going to go to the Arctic is going to need more information, and in order to do that, we have to start investing more into our presence up there.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you.